introduce myself. My name is Reski Maila Putri. My identity number is 1905-3019. I major in economic education in Padang State University. Okay, right now I want presentation about the material 3 chapter. The first chapter about the basic concept and principle of economic development. Initially, we must know definition of development economic. In general, development economic is a branch of economics that analyzes the problem faced by developing countries and looks for solution or way to overcome this problem so that economic development can develop more rapidly. What is meant by development? The next F, the 3 by means of development. Development is usually defined as an effort to achieve a sustainable per capita income growth rate so that this time can generate output that is faster than the population growth rate. However, along with the development of the time, economic development began to redefine in the relation to effort to reduce or eliminate poverty, inequality, and employment is the context of an increasingly developing economy. Thus, developing must be viewed as the multi-dimensional process involving various fundamental changes in social structure as stated as society and social institution, as well as acceleration growth, reducing inequality and reducing poverty. In essence, development must reflect change in the social system in accordance with various basic needs, as well as effort to foster the aspiration of individual and social growth in its system. Development should be an attempt to change the condition of life from what is considered universally to be better physical and mentally. So, what is the purpose of development? Have 7 purposes. The first is increase availability and expansion of the distribution of basic living necessities such as food, healthy, and protection. The 2, an expansion of the economic and social availability refers to individual and the nation as a whole, which not only frees from their bondage to servitude and feeling of dependence on other people. The third, increase as the standard of living not only in the form of increase in income, but also the availability of more employment opportunities and better education. Okay, the next about 3 core value of development. The first, adequacy, the 2, self-respect, and the 3rd, freedom. Okay, let's do explanation. The first, adequacy. Adequacy, the ability to meet basic needs. Everyone has certain basic needs to must be met in order to live life. The basic human needs to support his life include food, shelter, first, per capita income adjusted for purchasing power. The two, health as measured by life expectancy, nutritional intake, and child mortality. The third, educational attainment as measured by the level of literacy and level of education or lack of study at school. The next, overview of the difference in the structure of the third world economy. Have 7 components. The first, country size and income level. The size of a country, its population, and level of income per capita are important determinants of economic potential and factor that differentiate between development countries. Number 2, historical background. Most Asian and African countries have been colonized by European countries such as England, France, Germany, and Spain. The structure of the country's economy, education, social was formed by the former colonial stage. The next, the 3, physical and human resource. The economic growth potential of a country is largely influenced by physical resources, like land, mineral, and raw material, and human resource is level education. The 4, role of the public and the private sector. Most developing countries adhere to a mixed economic system in which the public and private sector intervene in the using resources. The division between the two sectors respectively in relatively generally determined by historical and political situation. The 4, industrial structure. Most of the developing countries are agriculture countries and commercial purpose in demand economic activity in the term of distribution of the use of the labor force and in the term of the proportion of contribution in gross national product. The 6, about dependence of abroad. It likes economic, politics, and culture. For developing countries, this dependence is very high, even in school, because it teaches almost all level of life. The 7, political structure, power, and resource. The constellation of interest and power among various groups of the people in the most developing countries was born as a result of different social, economic, and political histories. So, we can conclude that the general characteristic of developing countries. The first, low standard of living. The 2, low priority and productivity. And the 3rd, population growth rate hike. The 4, increased unemployment rate and job shortage. And the 5, dependence on agriculture production. And the last of dependent and sensitivity in the international relation. The second chapter about history of economic growth and the theory of economic growth. The first expert is Adam Smith. Theory assumes that economic growth actually rests on population growth with an increase in the population. There will be an increase in output or yields. The second expert is David Ricardo. The economic growth of a country is defined by population growth, whereas increase in the population will increase labor and require land or nature. by Malthus, where economic growth was always overwhelmed by population pressure with constant results. The next, Malthus. The essence of Malthus' theory is that population growth is not balanced with the amount of living necessities needed. The larger the population growth will be higher than the available means. The next, Marcus. According to Marx, economic growth can stop developing five stages. The first, socialist or primitive communal, that's rule slavery, and the third, feudal, and the fourth, capitalist, and the fifth, socialist or modern communal. The next, Chinese concern. In that economic growth in a country is influenced by the innovation process carried out by entrepreneurs, so that the innovation made by this entrepreneur can increase nation output. The next, Keynes. This theory promoted a mixed economy in which both the state and the purpose sector play an important role. The rise of Keynesian economic market, the end of laissez-faire economy. The next is Rostow. Rostow is an economist who comes from America. The theory of economic growth is very diverse theory of equality. The traditional community economic system that relies heavily on the agricultural sector, where the per capita growth rate is very low. The next is economic development will only occur if the industrial sector increases as the latter. The next Livingston. For overcome low level of equilibrium in per capita income, the within two side critical minimum measure world price per capita. Rosenstein the big pass theory is asserted with the name from Paul and Rosenstein Rodan. According to this thesis, to overcome the obstacle to economic development to an underdevelopment country and the progress big pass in the form of a minimum amount of investment. The next, theory of balanced growth. In the development program, all sectors of the economic must grow simultaneously in order to maintain the right balance between industry and agricultural for export. The next expert is R. Nelson. Cut the low-level balance trap. Growth of population make increase of income, but when the population grows, rate reaches the upper physical limit. Divisions to this line with the further increase in the per capita income. The last expert is theory of unbalanced growth. The concept of unbalanced growth was popularized by Frank Hartman. He argues that deliberately not balancing the economy, according to previously designed strategy, is the best way to save growth in a developing country. The next expert is Dolizan. Is the theory of community bonus is a general theory of community development in underdeveloped countries, when it might be based on a result of the study of the Indonesian economy. Dr. Book argues that in the economic sense, society has three characteristics. The first, social spirit, organizational form, and technical that dominate it. The next, Merdal argues because the economic development produces a circular cause evoke process in which the rich earn more and those who are left behind become increasingly constrained. The next phase enumerates examine the development of a labor surplus economic income three strategies or stage. The first stage at the unemployment worker within not increase agricultural output transferred to the industrial sector with the some institutional wages. The second stage, agricultural crops, increase agricultural output by produce than the industrial wages that in. The third stage, which mark is the end of the take-off stage. The next calendar, which is where a total saving is set aside from wages and SP a total saving from profit, we get Y equal W plus V. The next Horodomar. The Horodomar economic growth model is built of the experience of developing countries. They are primarily aimed at the examining the requirement for steady growth in the Sichuan economy. The next, John Robinson. Net income in the Robinson is in the total wages account plus total profit, which can be expressed as W is equal YNNPK. The next neoclassical in the economy net output is produced dependent on the factor of 5. The first net theodol energy stock available in machine form. The two, the number of labor available. The third, available land and nature resource. The fourth, the state of engineering knowledge is involved over time. The last theory is the neo-growth theory, which is the fake and epigenesis growth theory. Provide a theoretical framework for analyzing the growth because it is assumed that gross national product growth is determined more by the system of production process and not from outside the system. Okay, the next three chapter about economic development problems, such as growth, poverty, income, unemployment, population growth, distribution, education, and health. Okay, the first group. Economic growth problem can be viewed as the macroeconomic problem in the long run. From a period to another, the ability of a country to produce goods and production factor goods will always increase in quantity and quality. Population growth. The demographic transition have three stages, namely are the first stage 1 is high birth rates and death rates. Stage 2 continues high birth rates, declining health rate. Stage 3 falling birth rates and death rates, eventual stability. The consequences of high fertility. Some conflicting opinion or that first, population growth is not a real problem. Overpopulation is a deliberately contributed by the issues. Population growth is a describable phenomenon. Population growth is a real problem. The empirical argument, the negative consequence of population growth. The next goal and objective in the tour and census. Despite conflicting opinion, there is some common ground. perceived by experts. Where it varies greatly from culture, region, even though it is all within the territory of the unitary state of the Republic of Indonesia. Assessment of poverty in separable form measure or indicator based on certain norms. One of development strategies in poverty reduction effort can be into two. The first, a development strategy that uses indirect method of overcoming poverty based on the premise that high economic growth is needed to ensure the national economic gain. The second is that overcoming poverty by means of indirect trajectory down impact has actually made the income gap worse. Poverty, the right of policy option, combating consideration, areas of innovation, and its foreign packet of policies and policies option is or changing reduce factor price, progressive redistribution of asset ownership, progressive laissez-faire, and transfer payment and public provision of goods and services. And the next problem is income distribution. Measure of development with per capita income have many disadvantages, including the first, the level of person welfare is difficult to measure and is subjective. The two, the calculation does not pay attention to the aspect of income distribution. The next are population growth. In carrying out economic development, population growth is very important in maximizing economic development because too many people will make it difficult for the government to overcome this. The success of economic development is also seen from how the government in regulating the population in development country. The next, unemployment. Generally, unemployment is caused because the number of jobs secured is not proportional to the number of existing jobs. For a long time, unemployment has been a problem for the country's economy. This is because unemployment makes a productivity income have decreased. So, what the cause of unemployment in Indonesia and the reason? The first, the imbalance between work and number of workers. The cause of unemployment in Indonesia and the first reason in the imbalance between employment and the number of workers that increase every year. The existence of intense competition among fresh graduates or those for experience has created a new phenomenon that this imbalance has occurred. Master students and graduates even the level of difficulty in having a job because the number of jobs available is small and is not accompanied by the ability of the individual. The population explosion in Indonesia can also be one of the factors changing unemployment in Indonesia. This causes unemployed young graduates to want for job. However, it must also be wanted for because it causes an imbalance between workers who have been replaced by robots. Usually, the main reason is that the cost is much cheaper with fast and accurate work. The two, ability of unsustainable job striker. The cause of unemployment in Indonesia and the following reasons are the main criteria for job seekers that do not match their company's demand. The company will need employees who match the criteria of the needs for position to be acquired by prospective employees. This usually becomes an obstacle when companies need highly skilled employees. Ultimately, this will be only a few applicants who have the opportunity to be accepted. The third is lack of education and skill. The cause of unemployment in Indonesia and the following reason are problem with the skill and education of applicants. Lack of education will make it difficult for someone to become a workforce. As a result, most people who do not have a higher educational background usually only become manual labor. If manual work is absent and there is no entrepreneur is so, then a person can become permanently unemployed. In addition, skills are also important to train their ability to enter the world of work. Number 5. Poverty level. Study revealed that most of the unemployment come from people living under poverty, although the level of poverty in Indonesia has always been taken seriously and gradually. There is a lack of willingness to move out of the poverty zone. In addition, the opportunity to education or home skill is still very minimal. So, what happened is the problem of unemployment. Number 6. There are layoffs. The cause of unemployment in Indonesia and the following reason are layoff. Layoff will occur after the end of work contract or reduction in workforce. Number 7. For living. Lack of equal distribution of job variance could be cause of the unemployment rate in Indonesia. Less development area and domiciles that are far from employment opportunities become obstacle for them to achieve their dream. The limited cost of buying about 2-3 years less outside the region can also be a serious problem related to the unemployment rate in Indonesia. Therefore, equal distribution of employment is very necessary. The number 8 is global market. The cause of unemployment in Indonesia and the next reason is the existence of competition in the current global market or era. There will likely be an increase in foreign compared by established, but they tend to include some worker from that country rather than using natural labor. The creation of balance between foreign worker and native worker is an issue that must be taken seriously in Indonesia. Appropriate measure and regulation needs to be adopted so that a balance in the workforce can be created properly. Number 9. Difficulty meeting job seeker and job variance. Available variance or something not properly announced. Some people who can potentially fill the job variances something or information about the job itself. On the other hand, job seekers are usually mostly not active enough to dig up information about available variances. The next, urbanization. Urbanization can be larger, be stopped and avoided. Therefore, urbanization must be managed of priority in order to improve the welfare of people living in urban areas. In general, cities in developing countries are not easily to provide adequate housing for their entire population. Moreover, most of the migrants are poor people who cannot afford to building or buy decent house for them. The migration and urbanization dilemma have four dilemma. The first, urbanization is a trend and projection. The two, this is a massive and historical unprecedented migration. And the third, economics of location, transportation, cultural life, and skilled worker. The fourth, disadvantage pollution, crime, corruption, and infrastructure. So, what is the role of cities? The first, agglomeration economic or urbanization economic, localization economic, and the two, industrial district, have four firm land from other firm can control marketing advantage, and firm can lobby with the government, and last, grow trust or collection action. The next about is the urban informal sector. What is the characteristic it? Namely, unorganized and unregular and registered. Example include street vending, carpentry, barber, mechanics, in skilled work with the formal education, and the access to capital monopolistic competition, free entry, access, capacity, low profit. The first, mostly self-employed people or family own their business. The two, low productivity, low income, no job security, poor working condition, no person. The next is urban employment. The rural-urban migration causes unemployment and underemployment in the urban areas. Open employment rates in urban area are very high, or the unemployed people in the informal sector are not included. Migration and development. Have for migration and development. The first, job correction in the urban sector is more difficult and expensive, or benefit and high wage. The two, migration is symptom of and contributed to underdevelopment. The third, any development policy that influence income or income distribution will have an impact on migration. The fourth, other factor of internal migration also exists. A comprehensive migration and employment strategy. Belies create urban-rural balance, expand small labor massive industrial and heavy manufacturing press distortion, choose appropriate technology, modify the linkage between education and employment, reduce population growth, and last, decentralized authority to cities and neighborhood. The last problem of economic development are education and health. Education and health are two things that must be the priority of the government because much are related to the quality of human resource he embedded. If a country does not have education, it will be a backward country. Like some with help, if the people are sick, the country will be left behind. Improving health and education. Why increasing income is not sufficient? Because increase in the income of the not lead to substantial increase in investment in children education and health. Better education matter than to have healthy children. The two, significant market failure in the education and health require policy action. So, what is the gender gap, women and education? The first, You will cite less education than you Malay in nearly every LDC. The two, closing this education gender gap is economically deliberate. The third consequence of gender is in health and education. Health system and development, measurement and distribution is infant survival rate and life expectancy have deficiency as measured. World Health Organization definition of health as state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being are not namely the essence of distance and infinity. Health and productivity have third differs per health reduce productivity and income. The two, height as indicator of health has increased or correlation between back and earning. The third, health, productivity, earning, and development are positively related. Policies for health, education, and income generation have two. The first integrated program for the promotion of health education and nutrition status in the poor families improve child's health and the quality of education or Mexico. The two links between health and education program and microcredit program are educator and handicrafts. The next, health system policy. The health system includes public health department, hospital, doctor, and a traditional healer. Developing countries differ in terms of the shape or their health system. Indicators: the first, overall height in the population, health inequalities, patient satisfaction, and system performance, and the last, distribution of responsiveness. So, many health systems perform below potential preventable deaths. Disability access depends on the level of income. Government involvement is important because improvement is basic health contribution to reduction in poverty. Households expenditure health because their neglect externalities market failure result in the total wide market investment in health infrastructure. Then have some police approach or have third. The first one developing countries can do. The two, what the developing countries resource population and the global environment. The third, how development countries can assist developing countries or how. So, the causes of high fertility in developing countries is the household mother. The microeconomic household theory of fertility, the demand for children in developing countries, some empirical evidence, implication for development and fertility. Okay, just it my presentation. Sorry for my mistake and see you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.